Welcome to Raan Oosha's Conversations on the Spiritual Journey. Today I'm speaking with Thomas Stern. Grand Rising, Thomas.
Hello.
Usually on this program, we speak about the individual's journey, where they've come from, their history. But today we're going to speak on a particular concept that I spoke with Thomas on the other day, which we spent quite a while speaking about. And it was defense, what it means in non-dual terms. And so I've asked Thomas here to speak about it and just see where we go from there. So, Grand Rising again, Thomas. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Okay. All right then, Thomas.
Can I ask you, sorry, what is Grand Rising?
Grand Rising is, so if you look at the word good morning, in English, morning has another meaning, morning as in death.
Ah, yeah.
And words carry a vibration. So if you think you're saying morning all the time, morning, it has an energy which is, I think, quite low vibrational. But if you say the word grand rising, I think it vibrates on a much higher level. So if you try for yourself right now, say good morning, then say grand rising, and tell me how you feel.
Well, yeah. Good morning, Grand Rising. It's different, of course. It has a different association.
Yes, it's a different. So, well, it's probably for another time, but the English language has so many words and connotations that we can go into. Okay, all right then, Thomas, can we just go into it? Maybe start with the story that you told me the other day, and then we'll go from there.
Well, sure. I mean, I don't really remember much that we were saying, but I remember that there was something funny about how in our language we have certain words that have one meaning and that can be interpreted in different ways. I think that when we were speaking about conflict, and about how it is a process of separation, which is a kind of madness. It's not natural, really, I think, well, if you ask me, it seems a bit like a mad sort of thing. And we were speaking about how people put up walls to keep others out. And how that sometimes there's a reason for that. I think I remember I was speaking about the walk. I was going for a walk with my dog through the forest here, and I was looking for a bench to sit on, and there was a fence in front of it, and it looked very weird. It looked very kind of, it wasn't a beautiful fence or something. It was basically, I think, a wildlife fence to keep wildlife out of a farmer's garden. One of those mesh, quickly put together fences, and it was just in front of the bench. And it looked a bit ugly. And that kind of prompted a thought for me about the whole idea of fencing things off. And then while we were speaking, I realized that the word fencing and defense came up, and I realized how that is so closely connected with the word fence. And we stopped, I think, and that's when you had the idea to do this, when I said that we could look at the word defense to mean something else. We could look at it that true defense means to put the fence down, to defense, to put down all separation. So the true defense, or the true cessation of aggression, would be to become one again, which is love. And I think that when we are not doing that, then we're perpetuating conflict. We put up walls and we keep others out, and that is an expression of conflict. It's not an expression of love and peace. It's an expression of aggression. But the funny thing is that this promises to be a solution. This is taken as a solution to put up a fence that will give us what we want in a conflict, peace, when in fact it is the conflict. Because in love there are no defenses, there's nothing to ward off. All is included. Nobody is kept out.
So usually we associate defense with a barrier, whether it be psychological, emotional, or even physical. But so are you saying that the actual defense, to defend, is to lay the barrier down, whether it be emotional or physical? But I guess there's a lot of fear in there to actually take down those barriers.
Yeah. I think the fear is the key. That's the key to the whole thing. Because the fear arises even if we are having a personal conflict now with someone close to us or someone we are actually meeting with, and there is some kind of dispute. I think if we are looking honestly, we see that what can happen is that we're feeling attacked. And when there's a feeling of being attacked or vulnerable, there's an emotional response. And that emotional response can be like a feeling, maybe in the heart area, increased heart rate, kind of this fight or flight thing happening. So there's also something biological. And then what happens is there's an insecurity, a feeling of insecurity, of being under threat. And that can go in two different ways. I think it can go in many different ways, but I'm looking at two ways now. It can either go, it can find its release, meaning that I don't act on it in terms of aggression or flight or fight. I'm with it. I embrace it. And I'm not speaking of a real physical danger now, like when a tiger is in front of you, you have a chance to run, you run. It's probably the smartest thing to do. But I mean, or who knows, but I mean more when we are communicating with each other, the same kind of reaction comes up when someone is perceived to be a threat to us psychologically. And the first reaction, I think, that we are usually, or often people go to is some kind of attack or defense. That's the reaction to the fear, I think.
It was interesting what you said, that the defense is the conflict. Could you explain that a bit more, please?
I think what I'm just seeing now, I don't know, this is something to be explored, right? It's just what I had in mind when I said that is that when you well, when someone attacks you and you defend, someone strikes you and you ward off the blow, that's completely fine. That's intelligent. You don't let someone hit you in the face. You move out of the way. You kind of, and this goes into something really interesting. These martial arts, the really intelligent ones, they're also, they're using a physical combat situation, which I think is very rare. I don't see people getting into fights every day in kung fu movies. where you go out of your door and someone slaps you, it doesn't happen. So why do we have this, really? Why did these traditions have this? Because they were teaching us something way more fundamental. Like if you look at something like Aikido, which is using the momentum of the aggressor to disarm him. And the way you do that is the aggressor comes at you, attacks, and you don't make a brick wall of yourself, and then there's a clash, and there's a definite, injury then. But rather you welcome his attack completely. You go with it, and you just kind of gently direct his attack to the ground, to where gravity will pull it. You already have gravity on your side. You have all of nature on your side. All you're doing is you're gently directing him to his teaching, to his fall, where he will learn his aggression will always result in his own toppling over. So you are the real master martial arts man is someone who never really fights. He directs the aggressor and helps him. He helps him because he sees someone who attacks me is in confusion. He's not my enemy. That's the beginning already. That's a completely different situation than someone who is afraid because he feels under attack. He or she feels under attack by an enemy. The wise man sees the so-called enemy to be none other than himself. There's no fear. There's no feeling of being a separate, vulnerable entity. There's no fear of losing anything, of injury. None of that. That is completely off the table, you see. So that's not even coming into the equation now. So it's a completely different situation from the go. Attacker comes and the Aikido master will direct the attacker with his own momentum, with his confusion, and lead his confusion to a quick end, which is the floor, level, which is equilibrium, peace. It's already done. Whereas when you put up a wall, that is conflict, because you are seeing yourself in a war situation. So you are part of the conflict that will then continue, because it cannot find its resolution in the clash. The clash will prompt the next attack and the next clash. You know, it will keep perpetuating this because it is trying to find the ground, but none of the two parties are letting that happen. The one who puts up the wall and the one who attacks, they're both doing the same thing in some way. Because they're saying, the one is saying, they have something I want, or they have something that they don't deserve, I want to take it. I don't know, let's take that as a situation with two countries. So we attack them, and the others say they are aggressors, they want to take what's ours. We have to put up a wall to defend ourselves. We are in the right. And then we take up arms and we attack back so that they won't continue attacking our walls, and so on and on and on and on. This is this. But the other way would be to let them find their, you know, I'm not saying this is so easy when it comes to whole countries, but I'm saying the same principle is the same.
When you're speaking, I thought of the wall between the United States and Mexico. And the very act of there being a war creates a place where there is conflict.
Yeah.
Also, I thought of the boxer, and I guess the best way to win is not to block the punches, but to make the other person miss. Then they're using their own energy against themselves. And it's it's more tiring when you actually miss the opponent than when you hit them.
Mm-hmm.
So is it that we've created these barriers psychologically and physically, and that's creating so much of the conflict and aggression through the world, in ourselves and in the world?
We have created
the conflict within ourselves and in the world as well.
Yes. I think the conflict can only start within myself, always. In the United States, I don't really know. I think this seems to me like a rather silly way of, not the most convincing and intelligent way, perhaps, to create the appearance of conflict. Invent conflict by putting up a wall and saying something, you know, that's not really, has no meaning. But it doesn't matter where you look. If you look at the wall that went through, that used to divide Germany from the Soviet side and the Western side, seems to be always kind of some kind of business going on there. But about the inner conflict, yeah, I think so, because then we come back to the whole self-investigation idea. Let's say I live my life in conflict always, and I see that everyone is living their lives in conflict, or have been. Human beings have been living in conflict for a long, long, long time. This has been something that's always been present somewhere in some form or other. And if I ask myself, well, how can that be? If I become serious and I say, well, if I'm serious, I don't find this very attractive. I don't think it's very. It's not beautiful. So, and the question comes: is there an end to it? Is there an actual end to it? And as an industry, there's a lot of interest, a lot of investment in conflict. There are jobs specifically dedicated. There are ministries, jobs, institutions, studies, all of it invested in conflict. How many institutions, businesses, industries are invested in peace? None, because it's free. And the difference is, again, the master is one who doesn't even live in conflict in himself as much as possible, to a large degree, so that when an aggressor comes, he doesn't perceive that as conflict. You can see the difference. Imagine someone comes to punch you and you feel that you're being attacked personally or in any way. Everything in you, your whole body, your whole physiology, everything goes into defense mode and becomes stressed. And you become afraid and you try to prevent what's going to happen. And then in order to prevent it for sure, you then add injury after injury yourself, just to make sure that he stays down. But then you can become paranoid and you can say, well, there will be many more like him coming. So I need to make bigger defenses. I need to become the strongest. I need to become so powerful. So then you invest everything in some kind of armament. This can happen as a country in a war industry. It can happen as an individual who is constantly getting into arguments. There's a nice book by Schopenhauer, the philosopher, and it's actually a joke, this book, I think, but it's about how to win an argument. And it says nothing about how to be truthful. It just says how to win an argument and how sneaky you have to be and all this complicated mess. And there are people who are studying this stuff. And then they're going on internet forums and they try to win forum battles, in that way. But somehow it doesn't feel good. They're not happy people. There's no balance, there's no happiness. But the one who is happy is nothing. The one who is happy is nothing. So he's nothing to lose, nothing to gain. So when someone comes at him, it is almost comical. is almost comical. Instead of, there's no fear anymore, there's a joy. Like when you see like this kung fu master, he's always funny and happy. And when someone attacks him, it's comical. That's why they use sometimes, like, I don't know, you have these scenes where he just uses a feather to defend himself, you know, or something silly. He's not even, just whatever is there, you know. That's not the act of someone who's afraid. Because he doesn't take it seriously. Because he knows the other person is simply confused.
So what is hurt when when other people say things to you and then you can put up a defense with that? What is being hurt?
Well, if you investigate hurt seriously, then you would see there is nothing there. But as long as you think, as long as there's the belief that you have been personally attacked, there will be some kind of an energy in the body, I think, that is misinterpreted. And this gets very into something like very fine and subtle, I think, which is something that in meditation I like to look at often, is the way that there seems to be a hurt, a person, and something to defend or something to put right. Then it's as if there's an energy happening, some kind of emotional response to a situation, and it is somehow owned by me. I am hurt, is what my thought would say. He hurt me. She said something terrible to me. How dare they? Blah, 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 all this. This then creates an ownership of that, of an emotion, a hurt, a wound, a psychological wound. And then the next step is that as the story goes on and says, I have to put things right. I have to find release. And the release is then sought from where I place the responsibility. And the release never comes, and it's an endless frustration because I will seek responsibility in the one who hurt me. My mother said this and this when I was a child, therefore I am traumatized. I have to go to my mother and confront her now and tell her what you did back then was not right. Meantime, she doesn't maybe even remember that. She says, what do you want? What are you on about? Makes it even worse now. Now this me feels even more, feels mocked, not taken seriously. You know, all this. But the thing is that the problem was before. It was that the feeling that arose in the moment was made personal. My hurt, my wound, mine. So therefore it is as if it were trapped, put in a cage, and then it seeks to be released by something outside that has nothing to do with this cage, you know. But it holds the key to the cage, that you hold the key. You're just simply saying, who is hurt? What is there hurt in my experience right now? And some people who may listen to this, they won't understand, because this goes into understanding myself. This goes into self-knowledge, into self-inquiry. If I inquire into who I am or what I am, and I will find that there is nobody there to be hurt in the first place, that is the end of the hurt. Because the hurt can only exist or seem to exist because I say there is somebody to be hurt. I have made this a memory. I hold on to this memory. I identify with it the moment it comes. When I see this memory is not me, it's a phony thing that arises, then whatever energy there is, call it fear, hurt, it is nameless, it is not owned, it is free like a bird, and it will just move and unfold. And the beauty of the wonder is it is beautiful. Someone can hurt you. This thing may happen, you attend to it, you give it space, you allow it. Whatever comes up when someone seems to hurt you, you give it space and it just finds its release, and it is beautiful because it points to your invulnerability. It's just an energy in your conscious observation. It's just an energy moving through. Just like a sound passing by of a truck, the sound of a truck on a highway. It can sound loud, it can sound violent if you listen to a truck. It can be, you know, but it goes and it's gone. And you don't own that. You don't go later to the people who built the highway and say, how dare you? But with some things we do that, and they are no different from the sound of a truck. But we then say, we claim ownership of what's happening. We say, I am hurt. This is my hurt. This sound, this feeling, this vibration is me being hurt. But we're the one holding on to our own poison. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a fragility in the human life and that it's okay to punch each other because it's only energy anyway. This is not what this means, because that is often another thing that then comes up and says, well, you have to say when someone's stepping on your toes, obviously, at some point, or you go out of the way. But it's the truth, to find your true place of freedom in all situations. Then I think things become truly manageable. Yeah.
So does it all come from this sense of self then? I am this or I am that?
Yeah, definitely.
Is it possible to see through this sense of self? Is it a created self?
Yeah, it's imagined. It's imagined to be real. But imagination has quite a power. It is definitely possible to see through it. at any time. And that's what meditation teachers or spiritual, what all of this is about, I think, is to investigate that. And especially in our times, it always has to be appropriate to the times and the culture also, I think. Because different cultures have different ways of communicating and believing and thinking and seeing things. So whatever spiritual teaching may be appropriate for one culture with their language and their way of life may have no application somewhere else, I think. But yes, you can see through it. And it is something that is, what would you, because you said, is it a created self? Is like a ghost that is always being talked about or implied in conversation in all sorts of ways, hinted at. And there's no problem with that. I think it comes from, it's just a confusion, because in order to communicate, we need to invent something that isn't real. All our words are concepts that refer to something beyond themselves. But in doing so, they create a fragment of what they're referring to, because they want to refer to only a fragment, a specific fragment of our experience. Right now, my experience is the total vision of all that is appearing in front of me. And depending how I configure my attention, my vision will be different. And if I configure it to look there and a cup becomes clear when before it was just a blurry shape in the periphery of my vision, I focus on it, then I see, and then I use the word cup to refer to that fragment of my total seeing. There's a fragment. The fragment is a specific shape, a specific form, and you and I, we agree on calling it cup. But cup doesn't exist. We have taken it out of the totality. We've envisioned something out of the totality and given it the meaning cup. But it's useful because it refers to something that we can both agree on, we can both see and use and discard. So it's functional. There's no emotional issues with cup. There's no traumas to heal with a cup. But we have also created another concept in our total vision, taken the body, which is part of the total vision, which is also a fragment, taken it to be mine, and then created the I, myself. So that when a body appears in my total vision, you, Raan, and I speak to one another. We can say that. It's not really what is happening in our experience. In our experience, there's just this total experience happening with sounds, shapes, and so on. But in order for communication and more detailed descriptions to happen, for practical purposes only, we have these words. So I can say, tomorrow we'll meet at 12 and have a conversation about spiritual journeys with you and me. So that contains a lot of information. But none of these are really real. They're only pointers for an experience to take place. the experience of meeting and having a conversation. There's still no emotional problem there. There's nothing wrong with it. It all just happens. It's perfect. Communication is clear. There's no confusion. The confusion starts when the concept of I, myself, is taken to be a fragment of my total vision, of my total experience. Because then there's something to constantly manage. Because now I am equal to something lesser than I. And that is in constant under threat. It's perishable, subject to hurt, injury, trauma. The list goes on. There's new psychological issues being invented every year. We say they're being discovered. Where were they in the medieval ages? What did the people with ADD do then? Send them to the guillotine? Or what? You know, it's not real. And it keeps finding new excuses. But the end of it is to see, hold on, I'm not that. It's just the same as when an artist realizes there is not really a cup. Or Picasso says, well, what is the buffalo really? And he breaks it down, and then it's a bunch of lines, and then it's this, and you can't find it. It's just a way of seeing.
So is it when this sense of self is seen through, or the need to defend, as we have taken it to mean, also falls? So does that mean for any outward change has to come first from this inward change, inward seeing?
Absolutely, yeah. If you ask me, yes, because if I am in this mode where have to defend, then I'm in the lowest category of seeing the situation. I'm in the most hidden, most veiled, most confused state I can be in. When I'm the totality that I am anyway, free. The need to defend may come, but it will be seen as a tiny fragment within my totality. So we'll have much less pull, much less convincing power. It will be a mere suggestion. It won't be a hold on to my life kind of deal, because my life is far bigger than that. And if that inward change happens, I think the need to defend will very rarely arise. And when it does, it will happen in a completely different manner, I think. That is more intelligent and all inclusive. But if I am in this lowest category of being defensive of my tiny identity that hasn't been investigated, then any kind of outward change I seek is already biased by that. It can only go one way then, really. And that's the way it has been going with human beings for millennia. And we can always see that happening again and again. And sometimes, now and then, you see certain individuals who treated completely like Martin Luther King, for instance. I don't know why I thought of him now, but that is an example of the latter, I would say. The one that is open, not this tiny fragmented view. Basically, attention is being taken away from being a fragment. Attention isn't funneled completely into this narrow, small, fearful, unresolved energy, but attention goes back to the totality. And there's already peace there. That's actually it. There's no conflict there. Peace is already achieved. So whatever happens next will be happening within peace. Basically, that is the change already. It's already done then.
Can this way of being be seen in our personal relationships with parents, boyfriends, girlfriends? And if it's seen or experienced, what happens in those intimate relationships? Because they can be the tricky ones.
Yeah, they're really tricky. I had such a situation today, so it's a good opportunity with my brother. Him and I, we often disagree. And often our disagreements have been very childish and silly and filled with this kind of... And then whenever we start talking, opening up, everyone has a point of view, everyone is right in their own way, but then everyone has something to criticize about the other. Then I realized it's all nonsense. You can never solve it by saying you shouldn't have, or you should, or maybe next time we ought to. It's done the moment that there's no identification, no investment, no expectation, no involvement, no agenda. And then the shortcut is just love, saying, I love you. You're my brother. That's it. It's great. We don't even have to go and untangle some imaginary mess of the past, of which each one of us has only a tiny, tiny, tiny version. It will never find resolution. So it will only lead to further frustration. The solution is here. The end is now. It's finished. Then there's only love. Then there's no need anymore to have an argument. Suddenly, both of us just light up, hug, and we talk again like friends, like the best friends, you know? And it's like nothing ever happened. So.
Can this seeing be taught? Or does it just only come from within, something that you experience yourself?
cannot be taught, right? If strictly speaking, it cannot be taught because it's already here. It's so easy and effortless. It requires no effort, no practice, nothing whatsoever to be achieved. It is achieved eternally. It just needs to be recognized and seen and understood. Because we are while we are, and because we are, and I think we all are familiar with it, within an effort any kind of effort. We are living in an effort of any kind while we are, when we are, because we are. A teacher can point that out, invite us back to our natural state, which doesn't need to be taught or even explained, not only recognized. And we only need to recognize it for as long as we are oblivious to it, because we are busy thinking that things are different than what they actually are. It's like someone who is swimming in a swimming pool or in a lake, swimming, struggling to get to the other side. And he's like, really exhausting himself and really quickly and trampling his legs. And then someone else comes floating next to him like this on the water surface. and he doesn't need to teach him to do that. He just says, look, if you stop trampling, you can let the current carry you. And then the other guy will say, but how? What's the method? What do I have to do? How do I have to move my arm? He said, you don't have to move your arm. You have to stop. He said, but if I stop, I drown. I said, no. You won't drown. You just stop and you just gently kind of, and then it's like that, I think. And then you just come back to this relaxed state, realizing it wasn't really necessary to trample your way across. You can kind of float a bit. It's more, natural. Easier than, it's so easy. That's the thing, it's too easy.
Is this what is alluded to when we hear the terms awakening or enlightenment?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a bit more than, I feel like there are a lot of implications. So there is definitely a lot to discover. And if there's an interest, which has been the case for me and you as well, and our friends, it's something that's just fun. Because it's like a coming home. And coming home means I realize everything is happening by itself. There's nobody there to do it. And I think awakening means, or enlightenment, is, yes, that what you say is this realizing that my efforts and my struggle were based on a fiction of taking myself to be something I'm not. That's it. And then, of course, there are all kinds of funny things that then happen, that people say he is enlightened, or they are enlightened people, or there's an enlightened master, and so on. That has no meaning, really, I think. even enlightenment has no meaning. It's just another term in a specific, if you ask me, in a specific context to explain something. Because whatever is happening is already so effortlessly. It cannot be named. It cannot be put in any kind of category or nutshell, or there's no right and wrong. There's no enlightened being. There's just life. And that is the only entity, if you will, which, you know, already we're saying too much, but it's just impersonal. It's it's an impersonal life. Life free of any kind of person, an idea of being a person, and all of that person's problems and needs and wants. And that's actually the natural state. It's already so.
Do you find as you go along that there's a deepening of this experience, and do previously unrecognized traumas surface?
That may happen and have happened, but if I am seeing it completely correctly, I would say there's nothing previous to this. Because if a trauma arises, which says I am a previous, which gives the impression of being a trauma from the past, that is a sales pitch. And it is happening now. And it seeks again, in a subtle way, it can seem to seek to establish a personal story in time again, with traumas to be managed or to surface. What I would say is that what you say has truth, though, but that is delicate, because again, we can then fall into going into the personal story, or we can say there's energy being released. And that is happening now. That energy is not in the past, it is now. And with it, simultaneously, so there is also truth to it. With this energy, then a certain idea of me being hurt also vanishes, is also released, and is healed. We could see it like that. But the healing is simply a return to nothingness, to not even being a person at all, to being who you are, to being free, this aliveness, this presence, which is not in time, which is always presently unfolding, mysteriously. Never know what comes up next. But when there is when there is the idea that I, as a person, am now having past trauma being released, that is also happening now spontaneously. And if I see completely clearly and compassionately, then there's also this freedom now from this being this person, because it is seen to not really be me. And it's seen to be that which held me and made me feel hurt, made me feel sad or angry or whatever it may be. Yeah. And just one of the steps that worked for me was really to have compassion for that. It's not like you're saying, oh, I'm not the person anyway. So, because that is, and there's all kinds of things that may come up, this bypassing, but all of these things are the activity of a confused way of looking, I think. But in the clarity, all is equally impersonal. Don't know if that was clear the way I said that, but
So the traumas that arise are, in fact, energies that are appearing here and now. And is it that the healing comes when we sit with them without dismissing or objectifying them or making them right and wrong? And to seeing, not dismissing them, but to letting them in rather than rejecting them. That is the true healing, would you say?
yes, exactly. And I think this is the true healing, and the true and your natural way of being also is one of welcoming and letting in everything, welcoming in everything, letting in everything, because you don't know yet what will come. You have no idea. You're completely in the unknown, and you're being surprised. There's a difference between that and going digging for past traumas. If I go digging for past traumas, I am digging in an illusion. But if something that looks like a past trauma comes up, it may actually look like an old friend, or, and it comes now and it is being welcomed, and it has a different quality. There's nothing, it's not like, oh, I need to be healed or fixed and I need to go and work on myself. It is self-healing, self-rejuvenating. And whatever comes up and is welcomed. And it may have big surprises even. So that something, then you can have this realization in the moment where, oh, what happened back then to me wasn't that, or it wasn't like that, or, it's, that can also then happen there, yeah.
It seems we come right back full circle to the defense, exactly where we started from, to let it in and to see it, and that's where the healing is. So how, we've been speaking about this for an hour now, so how do you feel in yourself now speaking about these things? What have you learned, or have you learned anything yourself?
Yes, always. I think it's like always discovering. For me, talking about these ideas or talking about this and looking is like establishing more and more this freedom to be what's really always available and present. So I feel any kind of learning points me to that. And then it's like I feel really happy when I look at these things and or listen to someone speaking about it, or doing a meditation with someone, or myself giving a guided meditation. All of these give me a feeling of lightness. Well, it's not really, it's just this, it brings back this relaxed, effortless, choiceless beauty to the present moment. It is the present moment. And whatever is said or comes out or is being expressed, I feel they are all kind of offshoots, or they come out of that, so to speak, or they point back into it. What comes out of the source points back into the source too. You can follow the river upstream, or you can go out downstream. I'm always learning to see, to be more and more sensitive to all the ways in which this defensiveness can come up. And it can come again and again and again. And it does. That's, I think, the result of a habitual being human kind of deal. But then there's a beauty in all of it, in the resolution of it, in the opening up. It's like a flower opening and releasing the pollen and the perfume that it has kept for a long time. And I go through phases also, it seems, it appears that way, where there's more awareness of this and sometimes less.
I think the great thing about having these conversations is taking it with you into the next step. So you have a meditation practice or your class, and you take that class into the daily life. And hopefully with these conversations, it can be taken into your whatever you're doing next or happening next. And that way there's always this energy of still learning, which I find is just the amazing thing about having these types of conversations.
Yes, so, I find it's, sorry.
No, carry on, please.
Yeah, because it's always new and fresh in these kinds of conversations we're having. I'm not saying always, we're also having conversations sometimes where things, become more dull, or there's not this openness sometimes. But then when it's always fresh, and the word learning, I think you're using, is it can be misunderstood, I think. I think what you mean is that you're in a beginner's mindset always, rather than you are accumulating knowledge. Because if I were to say what did I learn? You know, what what did I take from this conversation? Well, today I learned that, you know, and I'll make a list of the things I learned. Then I think that's different, but always learning. Like an artist who doesn't know, because when I paint and I learn and I study art, I'm being a bit careful and afraid, and I don't trust my abilities yet. And I'm learning. And maybe there needs to be certain things, techniques to be learned. They need to be learned in order to achieve something specific. But when I'm in this always learning mindset, means I never know. I never know. And then all is just being revealed and discovered. And it's like a dancing. Something comes, it's being expressed, like I put it on paper, and then there's a silence again. Then it speaks, I let it speak. I let it speak, it speaks somehow. Communicates something. I don't know yet what it's gonna say. There's a hesitant, careful attitude, completely alert, open, but effortless and relaxed. And then the next brush stroke comes, and then so on. Whereas when I think I know, I think I already have the whole picture in my mind, and I just try to put it on paper, and it looks like a mess. It doesn't communicate anything. But when I really am dancing on the canvas, the whole conversation will later be the painting.
I think we'll leave it there for today, Thomas. Thank you very much for taking the time to go into this idea concepts. And as we saw, we didn't really know where we were going to go with it. But I do think something really came out of it, and hope that anybody who's listening really got something from it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Very much so, thank you.
So I want to say thank you to Thomas, and thank you to joining Raan Oosha on the spiritual journey. And Grand Rising. Thank you very much.
Grand Rising.